Hey guys, tonight we're diving into medieval jobs so strange. You wouldn't last a day. Forget everything Hollywood told you, this is the real story. And trust me, you wouldn't last a single shift. Before we get too comfortable, smash that subscribe button if you enjoy creepy history deep dives and drop in the comments. Which of these jobs do you think you'd survive? Now, dim the lights, maybe grab a snack, and let's step back into a time when your 9 to 5 could actually kill you. Close your eyes for a second. Imagine you've been yanked out of the comfort of your bed, your phone, your morning coffee, and dropped into the Middle Ages. No internet, no weekends, just survival and work that would make even your worst Monday look like a spa day. People back then didn't dream of becoming astronauts or influencers. They dreamed of not dying on the job, and trust me, the jobs were brutal. Some made you stink for weeks, others could infect you, and a few, well, they could curse your soul forever. Tonight, we're walking straight into that world. Strange professions, filthy tasks, and a reminder that sometimes history is way grosser than horror movies. So lean in, ready? Good, let's step into the muck. You step outside, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and your new boss waves you over with a shovel in hand. Tonight, you're the Gong Farmer, and no, that's not a medieval musician. Gong was the polite word for, well, human waste. Congratulations, you're about to climb into a pit filled with centuries of other people's leftovers. The stench hits before you even reach the ladder. Imagine the sour reek of rotten eggs, spoiled milk, and sewage all mashed together and multiplied by 100. The air feels thick, almost chewable. Your eyes water, your stomach lurches, and the worst part? You can't just plug your nose, because the moment you breathe through your mouth, you taste it. You lower yourself into the pit with your shovel. The walls are slick, crawling with fat, shiny maggots. You dig, scoop, and haul buckets of filth back up. Each splash burns your skin. Each drip soaks into your clothes. And there's no medieval Febreze waiting for you at the end of this shift. The locals don't envy you. They despise you. You work only at night, because if people saw this in daylight, they'd gag in the streets. Even the dogs keep their distance. And yet somehow, this disgusting nightmare is an actual job that kept entire towns running. So tell me honestly, would you last more than 5 minutes in this pit? Drop your answer in the comments and be honest, because I bet most of you would have quit before even touching the ladder. But hey, if you think climbing into a pit of waste was bad, don't relax just yet. Because once you crawl out and wipe your hands barely, you've got another job waiting. And this one doesn't just stink, it bites. You're barely out of the muck from the Gong Farmer's pit, and already someone shoves a long stick in your hand and tells you your next gig, rat catcher. Sounds easy, right? Wrong. You're not just chasing a few cute, fluffy pet store rats. You're hunting down black, greasy, plague-carrying vermin that swarm the alleys, crawl under beds, and gnaw through grain sacks like tiny demons with tails. You step into a narrow medieval street. It's damp. Shadows stretch between leaning timber houses. From the corner of your eye, you spot something dart. Then another. The ground twitches as a carpet of rats scatters in every direction, their squeals rising in a chorus that makes your skin crawl. Armed with nothing but traps, clubs, and sometimes even your bare hands, you're expected to dive into cellars and crawl spaces, grabbing these writhing, biting creatures one after another. Their fur is oily, their teeth sharp, and they're fast. The smell? A mix of moldy hay, rotting bread, and the sour metallic stink of disease. You catch one in a sack. It thrashes, scratching at the fabric, squealing so loud it echoes off the walls. Your knuckles are bleeding, but you can't stop. People's survival depends on you. Because each rat you miss might carry fleas, and each flea could mean plague. Now imagine this. You drag the cage of snarling rodents back through town. The villagers cheer half-heartedly, but keep their distance. Everyone knows you're the one who spends your life in the dark corners with filth and fever. Everyone knows your chances of living past 30 are slim. Tell me honestly, could you handle this job? Would you crawl on your hands and knees into a plague pit just to grab a squirming tail? Or would you run the other way and let the whole village fend for itself? Comment below. I need to know who's braver than me, because I'd be long gone. But here's the thing. Not all medieval jobs were about rats, sewage, or sharp teeth. Some were even stranger. Because while you're catching rodents in the alleys, someone else is wading into swamps, letting slimy creatures suck their blood on purpose. Leech Collector. You slog into a misty bog at dawn because, apparently, your blood is bait now. Your skirt, or tunic, clings to your legs, wool heavy with swamp water. Each step pulls like you're walking through warm porridge. A heron lifts off somewhere ahead. The reeds hiss. Something cold and slick brushes your ankle. Don't panic. Actually, yeah, panic a little. Your boss told you the rules. Roll up your hems, bare your shins, move slowly, breathe steady. Leeches love warmth and the tang of carbon dioxide. You are a walking buffet with lungs. Hold still long enough, and the mud begins to ripple. Thin, ribbon-dark bodies curl and stretch toward you, tasting the current, tasting you. One latches on with a soft kiss, then another, then 5. The first sting is a pinprick, like being snapped by a rubber band. The next ones feel like nothing at all. They drool anesthetic and anticoagulant, fancy words the barber surgeon swears by, so you don't feel them feeding. You only feel the weight. You check your legs, a drowsy constellation of black commas fattening into glossy olives. You try not to imagine your veins as tiny wineskins opening for business. You also try not to think about what's down there in the murk. Broken reeds, fish bones, a lost shoe, maybe somebody's very unlucky finger. The marsh smells like sour tea and old pennies. Midges chew your ears. Your teeth chatter, but your calves are hot where the leeches cling. Careful now. If you yank them off, their jaws can tear skin and keep bleeding all day. The proper technique? Salt or ash on the mouth. A slide of the thumbnail to break the seal. Drop into a jar and twist the lid. Today, it's a line of stoppered clay pots hung from your belt. Each one tick, tick, ticking as something inside rearranges itself. Yesterday, you used a calf's leg dipped in blood to lure them. Today, you're the calf. The work doesn't stop at collecting. You wade out shaking and count your catch for the barber surgeon who's already warming his irons. He pays per jar and haggles like your skin wasn't the appetizer. Good, plump stock, he says, holding the jar to the light while your ankle won't stop bleeding into your shoe. You smile because you need the coins, and because if you faint, he'll probably try to bleed you more, purely for balance. And yes, sometimes the leech crawls where it's not invited, nose, ear, or worse. Don't ask the village priest about last spring. He still won't swim. Now for the glamour no one mentions. You rewrap your legs with rag strips so the bleeding slows, hop back into the water, and repeat. Hours pass. Cold becomes a feeling your bones wear like a ring. You learn to read the marsh, the way the bubbles mean peat, the cool current means a spring, and the still patches mean you'll sink to the knee if you're careless. You also learn to keep moving. Stand too long and your feet go numb. Go numb too long, and you leave toes behind like offerings to the bog gods. You end with 3 full jars and a 4th half, filled with the stubborn ones that wouldn't let go. Your legs polka-dotted with bleeding half-moons. Every step back to shore feels hot and wet. You cinch the coins into your pouch, and the surgeon tells you to come back tomorrow. Of course he does. Bloodletting is fashionable. People swear it balances humours, cures headaches, and prevents bad dreams. You swallow a laugh. Bad dreams? Try this job. Quick poll, brave souls. Would you do this for a week if the pay covered your rent for a month? Or are you tapping out at something slimy kissed my shin? Tell me in the comments. I'm keeping score of the quitters and the heroes. You sling the jars into a wicker basket and shoulder it home. The wood creaks. Leeches thud in their clay cells as they slide over one another like a pocket full of living coins. Your calves are still weeping through the bandages. It looks dramatic. It is dramatic. Somewhere between noble and ridiculous, which is basically medieval employment in a nutshell. Back in town, kids point. An old woman nods like you've walked through fire. You have. Just wetter. You set the basket down and feel the rush that says you're still standing. You didn't drown. You didn't pass out. You didn't feed the swamp more than it fed you. Take a breath. You've earned it. Now that you've let the marsh drink from your legs, your next shift asks for a different donation. No blood this time, just dignity. Follow the stink down the lane to the fulling yard, where fresh cloth is softened the old-fashioned way, with feet, sweat, and vats of stale urine. You heard me. You follow the smell before you see the yard. It punches your sinuses like a slap. Sharp, eye-watering, unmistakable. Buckets line the wall, lids askew, flies taking attendance. Welcome to the fulling house, where brand new wool cloth becomes wearable, by soaking in stale human urine and getting stomped within an inch of its life. Your foreman waves you over with a red, cracked hand. "Boots off," he grunts. You peel them away, and the cold finds you instantly, a creeping chill that settles in your bones. He points to a waist-high vat. Inside, a pale, murky brew the color of weak tea, topped with a scum that shimmers like an oil slick. That's lant, household urine collected all week, now ripened just enough for peak cleaning power. The ammonia strips grease, lifts dirt, and helps the fibers felt. Basically, it's medieval detergent, with a kick. You climb in. The liquid wraps your shins like hot vinegar. Your eyes sting, your throat clamps, and somewhere inside your head, your dignity whispers by. "Walk it," the foreman says. And you do. Knees pumping, feet kneading the cloth beneath like stomping grapes at a festival that hates you. The wool fights back, thick and resistant, a heavy animal trying not to be tamed. After a minute, your calves burn. After 5, your lungs bargain. After 10, your brain floats above your body, watching this squishy nightmare from the ceiling. The rhythm settles in. Step, press, twist. Step, press, twist. Each push forces the fibers to lock tighter, turning loose weave into a dense, wind-blocking miracle. You cough. The cough burns. Someone drops a fresh bucket into the vat with a splash that earns a round of curses. It's warm. Too warm. Don't think about why. Across the room, a pair of water-powered stocks, giant wooden hammers, slam down in mechanical harmony. Thud, 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 pounding cloth in another trough. The building shivers with every blow. Those are for the heavier bolts. If your master rents mill time, the stocks do what your legs are doing now, but harder and faster. They miss sometimes. Don't get close. The new boy did last winter. He's still here. Minus a thumb. You switch vats. This one has a scoop of fuller's earth mixed in, the fine clay swirling in clouds, sucking up oil from the fibers. You work the cloth like dough, pressing your heels into it, massaging the weave. Your feet prune to pickled plums. The skin turns ghost white, then angry red. The wool scratches your soles raw. The ammonia raises pinprick blisters wherever you've nicked yourself. Welcome to the club. Cracked heels, chilblains, and a cough that tastes like pennies. The foreman shouts, "Turn it!" You and the others heave the bolt out of the bath. It slumps like a drowned bear, streaming sour reek onto the floor. You shoulder its weight, 2 steps, 3, and lay it across a bench. The steam coming off it smells like regret. You beat it with paddles to drive out the liquid, heavy, rhythmic smacks that spray a fine mist your eyes will remember for days. Now for the stretch. Outside in the wind stand long frames studded with iron hooks, tenter frames. You drag the cloth over, clamp the edges, and winch it tight so it dries flat and true. That's where on tenterhooks comes from. Cloth strung taut, humming in the breeze like a held breath. You check alignment. If it dries crooked, a tailor swears at you tomorrow. If it dries too loose, a merchant swears at you next week. Either way, someone swears. You move from frame to frame, hands red and slick, nose gone numb to the smell that now lives in your hair. The sun tries to be kind. The wind isn't. It ladders up your wet sleeves and nests in your chest. When you head back inside, the heat hits like a bakery oven filled with pickles. The stocks keep hammering. A worker sings a rude song just to keep time. Another jokes that his wife can smell him from the next parish. Everyone laughs because it's true. Fullers aren't invited to fancy dinners. Fullers are the reason anyone owns a warm, water-shedding cloak that doesn't flop like a tarp. Lunch is a heel of bread, and an onion eaten out by the frames because nobody wants you near the kitchen. You chew fast, wipe your face on your sleeve, and try not to think about the streaks your sleeve has earned today. Then it's back in the vat. Step, press, twist. Your lower back sparks. Your hips click. Your toes numb out. Your brain learns a trick called elsewhere. Quick check. Still with us? Be honest in the comments. Could you do this 6 days a week, sun up to sundown, for coin enough to keep a roof and maybe a second-hand cloak? Or would you hand in your apron at the first bucket and take your chances begging at the market cross? Afternoon blurs. Pound, soak, trample, ring, stretch. A buyer pops in to tap a finished bolt, listening for a springy, dense sound like a drum muffled with wool. He nods. That nod keeps you fed. He leaves with his cloth, and you stay with your vats. By dusk, your feet are two small, angry countries negotiating a fragile peace. You haul the last piece to the tenterfield, set the hooks, and watch it billow like a grey sail. The yard exhales. For a heartbeat you feel proud. That cloak a mother wraps around her child this winter? It won't leak. The wind can snarl, the rain can spit, and that fabric will hold. Someone will sleep warm because you spent your day ankle-deep in yesterday's chamber pots. You rinse your legs at the pump, which helps exactly zero. The smell isn't on you, it is you. You pull on your boots anyway. The foreman tosses you a few coins, black with grime. Your hands shake as you pocket them. You've survived another shift. Before you leave, a mongrel nosedives into the tenterfield, chasing a partridge, and tears at a drying edge. The foreman swears like a thunderstorm. Right on cue, you hear the church warden clacking down the lane with a willow switch, muttering about beasts in God's house and order on Sundays. He eyes the dog like it's a demon, and the whole town like it's his job to tame. You've had enough of vats and vapor for one lifetime. Time to trade sting for snap, stink for scolding, and wet wool for wet noses. Now that you've walked cloth through ammonia and pinned it on tenterhooks, let's walk into the nave where silence is sacred and chaos has 4 legs. Grab your switch, square your shoulders, and try not to laugh at a barking interruption in the middle of the creed, the dog whipper. You poster up at the west door, a medieval bouncer with a baptismal font for a water cooler. Light filters through stained glass, scattering rubies and sapphires across damp flagstones. The air is a stew, beeswax, cold stone, wool cloaks wet from drizzle, a hint of incense, and the ripe, unmistakable perfume of wet dog. Your kit is simple, improvised, and slightly ridiculous. A hazel switch with leather tassels, a forked staff, good for scooping bellies and steering flanks, and a strip of foxtail tied to a cord, because sometimes dignity fails and you have to bribe chaos with a fluttering toy. Tucked in your pouch, 2 scraps of salted offal, emergency diplomacy. You scan the nave. No pews here, just benches and open floor packed with bodies. Babies wheeze, old men cough, and somewhere a goose threatens to join the creed. Then the culprit arrives. A mud-slick hound barrels down the center like a furry comet, shakes itself beside the font, and baptizes 5 parishioners in a spray of swamp. A rippling chorus of tisk-tisk surges like wind through reeds. You move. Not a sprint, too noisy, but a glide, reed quiet, switch at your thigh. The hound nosedives beneath a bench, nails skittering on limestone, tail wagging like a banner of anarchy. You drop to a crouch, reach with the forked staff, and nudge, gentle, persuasive. The dog snorts, considers sin, and bolts the other way, straight toward the choir. A boy laughs, the canon does not. Peace, the priest intones, voice climbing the rafters. Peace is relative. A terrier joins the fun, discovers a sausage in a farmer's pocket, and raptures away with it. You cut the terrier off at the rood screen, flick the foxtail, and the thing goes still in canine hypnosis. In the same heartbeat, a goose beats its wings and honks like a broken trumpet. You pivot, interpose the fork, and steer the white dragon toward the porch with patient, humiliating grace. Feathers pluck the air around you. A child claps once, then remembers himself and pretends to pray. You live in the tightrope space between order and insult. Too rough with a beloved hound and you spark a fistfight. Too gentle and you preside over Dog Derby Sundays. You learn owners' faces, who will smirk while his setter tracks muddy paw prints across a tomb slab, who will weep if his old moppet gets nudged. You learn the geography of temptation, where tallow drips near the candles, where crumbs collect by the misericords, where a cat likes to nap on warm stone. You also learn that fleas commute. You feel them explore your cuffs, then your wrists, and you promise yourself a vinegar wash that you cannot afford. A rustle by the side aisle. You find a brindled cur hunched against a pier, ribs showing. Quietly, you lower, palm out. "Come on, old soldier." Your voice barely dusts the air. He growls, a tired warning. You offer salted offal. He sniffs, softens, and lets you slide the fork under his chest, guiding him toward the light. Outside, the world blares. Market clatter, cartwheels, gossip. You tip your head to the churchyard yews. He trots off, dignity intact, prize in mouth. A good exit. You count those. Inside again, you station yourself near the font. The sermon lifts and falls. Words about sin and salvation roll like surf. A piglet squirms free of a rope and streaks past, pink blur, leaving a comic trail of squeals. You catch it mid-lane, scoop with a fork, return it to a red-faced boy who won't meet your eye. You nod, as if you didn't just perform porcine ballet in front of God. Fun fact for the screen. Some parishes kept special seats for your office. Others paid in coin or in kind. Boots, a cloak, ale at feast days. A few used iron tongs to snare animals by the neck, a harsh tool you despise. You rely on rhythm, angles, and the quiet pressure of presence. Like every medieval job, your success is invisible when you're perfect. Order looks like nothing happened. The hazards are not invisible. A snappish mastiff finds your calf while you're busy with a goose. Your leggings tear, your skin blooms red, and you swallow the shout until it tastes like copper. The owner hisses apologies. You nod once. You will pack the bite with salt tonight and limp your way into tomorrow. People imagine devotion looks like stillness. In your world, devotion looks like motion. You orbit the nave, a planet with a switch. You knock a sleeping cat off a ledger stone, because last week it decided the bishop's cope was a scratching post. You steer 3 village boys out to the porch to race their whispering outside. You nudge, you coax, you intercept. Each small correction a stitch in a fabric more fragile than any cloth you fooled. Attention. When the host is raised, you hold your breath. Even the dogs know a change in weather. The room becomes a held note. For a blink, you can hear the church itself. Timber beams creaking, a sparrow settling in the thatch, candle fat whispering as it liquefies. Your switch is still. Your jaw unclenches. Amen. Service over, chaos exhales. Boots scrape, gossip ignites, coins chime. You hold the door and funnel the life back out. Someone slips you a heel of bread, someone else a wink and a "saints keep you." The priest pretends not to need you, then thanks you without moving his lips. That is your raise. You walk the perimeter one last time. In a side chapel, you squat to mop a circle of muddy prints with a rag that will never be clean again. Outside by the lich gate, a pair of boys try to teach a dog to bow. You chase them, laughing, and the dog barks like the world is ending in joy. Your calf throbs. Your stomach reminds you that bread is not stew. You roll your shoulders and listen as the bell changes its voice from prayer to labor. The sound carries you across the square. Beyond the market, behind hoardings and rope, a stone forest climbs. Scaffolds, pulleys, cranes, a half-born tower nibbling the sky. The same church that needed silence now needs muscle. And guess what fuels the tallest machine on site? Now that you've kept God's house from turning into a kennel, trade your willow switch for a wheel wider than a cottage door. Step into the ribbed drum, put your weight to the rungs, and feel a cathedral rise with every footfall. And know that one misstep turns the hymn into a dirge. You stand at the foot of a half-born cathedral, a cliff of ashlar blocks stippled with scaffolding. It smells like wet limestone, tarred rope, and lime dust that sneaks into your teeth and sets like frosting. Above you, a timber tower rises, a ribcage of beams lashed with iron dogs and pegs. At its heart, a giant wooden wheel taller than a cottage door. ribs radiating from a fat oak hub, rungs spaced like a ladder bent into a circle. They call it the tread wheel. The masons call it a miracle. Your legs call it a mistake. A foreman, arms roped with veins, voice rough as a rasp, barks signals, "Hoist!" A signaller on the scaffold answers with a horn brap and a flourish of flags. Over the pulley, a hemp line sags, then tightens, biting with a sound like a bowstring. At the far end of that rope, a stone, neatly dressed, riding in a sling. It looks obedient from the ground. It has other ideas. You climb into the wheel. The inside smells like sap and old sweat. The rungs bite the soles of your boots. "Walk," the foreman says. "Not run, not hop. Walk." You lean forward, and the wheel rolls under you, heavy at first, then alive, answering your weight with motion. The first step kisses your calves, the second wakes your thighs, the fifth steals your breath. Outside, the rope hums as the stone leaves the earth, a slow, deliberate levitation. The wheel sways a hair. Your body learns a new language, tiny corrections, hips as ballast, feet as metronome. Too fast and you outpace the load. The rope snarls. The foreman swears you into next week. Too slow and the stone dangles mid-air, wind-fetched, thinking about smashing into the pier your friends are standing on. Your job is a duet with gravity. Gravity always sings lead. You settle into rhythm. Breath in on the lift, out on the hold. Each rung rises to meet your foot. Each rung falls away like a vanishing stare. The wheel's spokes flash past. The world flickers. You are a living gear. Above, masons lean over the scaffold, limey hands ready to guide the stone home with pry bars and curses. One of them, face chalked white, hair full of dust, gives you a little salute. You nod back without taking your eyes off the rungs. Eye contact is for people who aren't one stumble away from becoming a cautionary tale. The signal horn pops. Hold! You plant your feet and lean back, letting the wheel press your boot soles until the rungs tattoo your skin through leather. A pawl clicks into a ratchet with a comforting clack-clack, pinning the drum from backspinning. You hear the rope complain, fibers rubbing, tar warming, while the stone inches into place. Somewhere up there, a mason whispers sweet nothings to a block that weighs as much as a bull. "Down a finger," the foreman calls. You reverse, heel first, toe second, resisting the weight now. It wants to run. You do not let it. The wheel tests your ankles, your knees, your stubbornness. This is not lifting. This is negotiating. The hazards are simple and final. If you slip, the wheel can sprint. If the pawl misses, the load can turn the drum into a hungry thing that drags you up the wall, then spits you out under it. If the rope snaps, the stone doesn't argue with anyone on the way down. Your best friends on site are the guy on the brake, the guy on signals, and the guy who checks the knots like a jealous lover. Weather is a co-worker. Gusts shove at the dangling load. Rain slicks the rungs so each step is a prayer. In winter, your breath makes its own fog machine. In summer, the wheel becomes a kiln. You sweat until salt stings your eyes and you taste rope in your mouth. Lime dust turns your nose into a mortar pan. Splinters lodge, heal, and leave souvenirs. Your shoulders harden. Your hands go to knots you didn't know existed. Your stomach flattens because lunch is usually a crust, a sliver of cheese, and a promise. Quick reality check. Could you do this all day without headphones, without pre-workout, without a complaint department? Comment. Run. If you'd step into the wheel for one hoist. Comment nope. If you're staying on the ground holding the snack basket. You walk, and the tower grows. Stone by stone, course by course, you trade footsteps for height. Bells will hang where your calves burned. Light will fall through glass because your lungs paid the toll. It's the most medieval thing imaginable. Community ambition strapped to a rope and lifted by a human inside a wooden circle. A new task. A mortar bucket. A sloshing belly of lime, sand and water must rise before it sets. The mix nips your nostrils like an angry lemon. Hoist! You lean, the drum spins, the bucket climbs. Halfway up, a gust takes it. Hold, the brake bites. The bucket swings, paints a white crescent in the air, misses a mason's head by less than a prayer, and slaps the pier. The choir of swears that follows could strip paint. You exhale the breath you've been holding since Tuesday. The wheel is a classroom. Apprentices learn to listen with their feet. Veterans count beats and judge weight by the way the drum groans. The signaler's flags are your sheet music. Green cloth waves, go. Crossed flags, stop. A jerked flag, lower slow. Horn blasts translate weather and worry into syllables your muscles obey. Everyone is conductor and instrument at once. Your shift ends when the light tilts gold and the scaffolds throw long spines across the yard. You step out of the wheel and the ground feels like a boat. The foreman presses coins into your palm, dull discs etched with sweat. You rub your calves and stare up at the day's work. A new line of stone holding hands with the sky. Tomorrow, you'll climb into the circle again, and again. And one day, when the wheel is gone and the crane dismantled, people will stand beneath the vault and whisper that it feels like forever. You'll smile because you know forever was counted in footsteps. On the way down the lane, you pass the beadle herding strays away from vespers, the fuller staggering home vinegar sweet, and the carter cursing a wheel rut like it insulted his mother. Past the market, down a quieter street, a lamp glows behind a shutter. A sign scratched with symbols, circle, triangle, star, hangs crooked. The scent that leaks from the door is not food. It is something sharp, metallic, and weirdly sweet. Apprentice wanted, the placard reads, quick hands, brave lungs, discretion. You've traded muscle to lift stone. Are you ready to trade breath to lift secrets? Now that you've danced with gravity inside a wooden wheel, step into a smaller circle. A glass alembic, a crucible's lip, the rim of reason. Swap sawdust for sulfur, tar for mercury, and the clean honesty of weight for fumes that promise gold and coughs that taste like coins. The alchemist's assistant. You step into a room that smells like the inside of a thunderstorm. Metallic, sharp, and a little like bad eggs met a lemon and lost. Shelves crowd the walls. Jars of powders that look innocent until the labels whisper menace. Quicksilver, mercury, brimstone, sulfur, sal ammoniac, ammonium chloride, vitriol, sulfates, verdigris, copper salts, niter, saltpeter, and a dozen mystery pastes the color of Mediva. Call him Master Paracelsus but local, has hair like frayed rope and fingers stained every alchemical color of do not ingest. He taps a parchment filled with circles, triangles, and Latin that might actually be a grocery list for the afterlife. Today, he declares, we chase perfection. You translate. We heat rocks until something hisses and hope it doesn't kill us. Your station is the Athanor, a stout brick furnace that purrs when the bellows breathe. On the bench, a crucible, clay cup that will definitely crack at the worst moment, a glass retort, curved like a bird's neck, and a lumpy alembic, two-piece still for distilling dreams and/or danger. The master hands you a mortar and a pestle. Grind, he says. You do. The grit sings against the bowl. Cinnabar, mercury sulfide, crumbles into a red dust so vivid it seems lit from inside. It's gorgeous. It's also how a lot of bright people forgot their own names. You tip the powder into the crucible with a pinch of salt and a prayer. The furnace breathes. Heat slicks your face. You slide the crucible into the coals with iron tongs, count heartbeats, and ease the retort over the mouth to catch whatever vapors try to escape. The master stands close, too close, murmuring about sulfur, mercury, and salt as cosmic principles, about elements seeking perfection, about lead yearning to be gold the way sinners yearn to be saints. You nod like this is philosophy, and not an OSHA violation with footnotes. The first whiff hits, brimstone opening like a rotten flower, sal ammoniac biting your sinuses, a ghost of sharp sweetness that might be vitriol becoming something worse. Your eyes water, your tongue tastes like nicked pennies. You adjust the bellows, not too eager, not too shy. Heat is a language, and you're learning the accent. The glass fogs, then glistens. A bead condenses in the retort's neck and slithers toward the receiver. It breaks into smaller beads that race each other like liquid mirror. Quicksilver. The master smiles the way gamblers smile before they lose the house. Careful, he says. Too late to be useful. Mercury is lively. Lively means in your lungs, in your skin, in your future tremors. Your hands go steady the way hands do when the brain realizes the body would like to remain a single unit. You keep the draft low, coaxing vapors into glass, not out into a room you also enjoy breathing. A different experiment. Aqua fortis, nitric acid, eats a coin to prove its appetite. You watch as clean silver clouds, then vanishes into a greenish promise. The master dips a feather. It hisses back a bald quill. Proof, he whispers. Proof of what? That curiosity is an apex predator. There's craft in the chaos. You weigh powders on a brass scale fine enough to shame a jeweler. You seal joints with loot, a sticky clay, so fumes don't wander into your skull. You learn heat by color, cherry, orange, yellow, white. You tap glass with a fingernail to hear the pitch that says still whole. You keep vinegar nearby for splashes, sand for spills, and a bucket for fires that shouldn't be. Then the master's favorite trick, aurum potabile, drinkable gold, which is neither and both, depending on how badly a rich patron wants to live forever. You grind saffron for color, dissolve flecks of leaf in something they swear is medicinal, and bottle sunshine in a vial. It's snake oil with better stationery. The patron will pay, sip carefully, and pronounce it miraculous while you count coins and try not to count your sins. Between miracles, there are little disasters. A crucible pops and freckles your sleeve with molten lead. A retort hairline cracks and exhales devil's breath. The cat knocks a jar of verdigris and leaves a neon paw print across your notes like an illuminated manuscript no one asked for. You sweep, you cough, you rewrite. Your head hums like a hive. Your gums taste wrong. You tell yourself it's the vinegar fumes, not the mercury, because the first lie in the lab is the one you tell yourself. Fun interlude. The master shows you transmutation by tossing a pinch of stibnite, antimony sulfide, into molten lead. It brightens unnaturally, flashes, and throws off a goldish sheen for just long enough to sell a story. See, he croons. You do see. Alchemy is part chemistry, part theater, part faith, and part don't lick that. You keep a ledger, temperatures by color, minutes by prayer length, smells indexed like a perfumer from hell. You sketch apparatus that never quite match what your hands built. The master adds marginalia. Solve et coagula, dissolve and recombine. Visita interiora terrae, rectificando invenies, occultum, lapidem. Go inside the earth, refine, find the hidden stone. You go inside the furnace instead and find a headache. By evening, your skin shines with sweat and dust. Your sleeves sparkle with tiny mirrors where mercury pricked the fibers. Don't think about it. You clean glass with ash and grit until it squeaks. The master, generous in his way, gives you a thimble of wine to chase the vapors. You wonder which vapors. There were so many. Quick audience gut check. Would you take this apprenticeship for a shot at history's most dangerous science fair? Or do you prefer your lungs unpickled? Comment, lab rat if you'd try it. Hard pass if you're keeping your brain cells for hobbies. You step outside into air that smells like weather instead of theories. The stars are sharp enough to cut yourself on. Down the lane, a bell tolls, not for vespers, but for a house in mourning. A shutter opens. A white cloth appears on a sill. People cross themselves as they pass. Work changes shape after dark. Alchemy promised immortality, but the village has a more urgent problem. A soul to be sped on, a family desperate for assurance, and a job that pays in shivers. Now that you've bottled perfection in glass and breathed enough fumes to gild your cough, trade crucible for bread laid on a cooling chest. Step from secrets to sorrow, from gold talk to grave talk, where you're paid to swallow what a life leaves behind, literally. The Sin Eater. It's late. Lantern light trembles against the timber. A hush drapes the lane, because something important has happened. Something small and enormous at once. A neighbor has died. The house is full of candles, faces pressed like pressed flowers, and the air tastes like boiled cabbage and candle wax. You've been summoned, not with a letter, but with a look. The hollow, urgent look of mouths that need a way to stop feeling guilty. You arrive to find a bed draped in a white cloth. The family gathers close, hands folded or grasping wrists, cheeks wet with grief. On the chest of the corpse, the matron places a thin, stale wafer of bread. and a cup of beer or mead. It's simple, ridiculous, thin as hope. But it matters. This is the part no priest will stand in for. Someone must take on what the dead might have left undone. They turn to you, not with reverence so much as relief. You are both practical and dispossessed, paid in coins, in a scrap of cloth, in a promise of alms. The village view of you is a mix of superstition, necessity, and contempt. They need what you do, and will not touch you the way they used to after. That's part of the bargain. You kneel. The candle glow makes the dead look softer than they were alive. The bread is dry, pressed flat, coarse as a roof tile. The cup smells of sour ale. You lift the wafer, press it deliberately to your lips, and chew. The taste is nothing noble. Dust, old grain, the faint tang of beer. You swallow. It is quick, mechanical, and somehow heavier than a sack of coals. The family watches in a breathless silence, as if the walls are listening. What they believe is simple and terrible. By eating the bread and drinking the ale laid upon the corpse, you take in the dead's sins. Evil is transferred like a stain. The person who mourns can cross themselves with the weight lifted. Their soul is cleared to rest. You, meanwhile, carry the invisible cargo. People will nod the next Sunday and not sit next to you. Children are told not to play in your yard. You've become a living paradox, needed but untouchable. The work has rituals. You do it with solemnity because theater helps make magic feel real. There are words people mutter, prayers half remembered, curses half quenched, as if language itself can seal the stain inside you. Sometimes a priest pretends not to see. Sometimes a neighbor leaves a coin discreetly behind a stool. You pass along the payment with the same deadness you took the bread. You've learned to measure grief like a merchant measures grain. The physicality of it is almost ordinary, chewing, swallowing, but the aftermath is not. You smell of the house when you leave, soap and sweat, and the ghostly perfume of embalming herbs that were never there. You wrap your cloak tight, as if you could stitch the job away. The coins are cold in your palm. People will whisper that your luck has run out, or that your soul won't fit into a church pew. They will argue in the tavern until someone flicks a coin at you and calls you saint-bearer, with the same voice that calls you filth-mongrel 2 days later. Sometimes, late at night, you sit by the fire and listen to the way the house around you breathes. There's a quiet pride in what you do. A family sleeps a little easier because you swallowed someone's last wrong. But the pride is a thin bread to live on. The shame sits on your shoulders like a damp cloak. You can't shake it. You can only step into sunlight and let the world pretend it doesn't see. Quick check. Would you take a handful of coins to carry someone else's regret? Comment below. Bread if you'd do it, nope if you'd rather risk ghosts than gossip. You leave the house lighter in one way and heavier in another. The night air is sharp. The town seems smaller. As you pass the churchyard, a gravedigger kneels in the moonlight, lifting turf in a rhythm like a heartbeat. His shadow looks like a question. The idea of dirt under nails and the weight of the earth presses on you for a second, more than the coins do. Survival makes you consider things that once would have horrified you. And then a very practical thought nips at your sleeve. Coins go fast. Bread does too. The surgeon down the lane, masked and dry-handed, has been known to offer 10 times what the family paid you, but for a different service. He pays for bodies, not sins. If you're hungry, there are darker markets where the dead have value beyond absolution. You've swallowed bread and prayers. You've walked home with gossip at your heels. If what you took into yourself wasn't enough to empty your pockets, there's a job that asks for something else entirely. Work that happens under moonlight, behind church hedges, for the cash-hungry hands of men who want bodies to study, not prayers to settle. It's quieter, colder, and carries a different kind of silence. The Resurrectionist. Midnight wind threading through crooked chimneys, the distant clank of a market gate, a dog barking twice and then silence, a lantern's tinny hiss. You slip out when the town thinks it's asleep. The moon's a sickle over the churchyard, and the air tastes of wet stone and last week's smoke. Your boots are soft with mud. You pull your hood up because faces are expensive, and you prefer to be worthless at court. Hunger has teeth tonight. Rent is sharpening its claws. This is why you do what you do. People call you many names: the grave robber, the resurrection man, the night job. But none of them will hand you a loaf when morning comes. You have a crew. There's a look that passes between you. A short, private language. A pointer of the chin. The lift of an eyebrow. A foot angled to the left. You move like a rumor, all elbows and hush. The churchyard looms like a small, patient city of mounds and low stones. Lantern light makes the angels on tombs look like they're plotting rebellions. The earth smells of damp roots and older rain. You know graves by sound. A hollow there where the soil's recently disturbed. A long patch of turf that hasn't knitted. A stone that wobbles if prodded. You don't say which graves. You'd never share the trick of survival with someone who could cough tomorrow and ask for charity today. Your hands are steady from years of hard things. You are not a monster. You are someone who understands necessity. The work is quicker than people imagine and slower in the ways that matter. Quick because you can be done before the church bell finishes its third toll. Slow because the memory of a face, someone's mother, someone's boy, itches at the back of your eyes later when you try to sleep. You find the weight first. The hollow under the turf that tells you a coffin sits too shallow or that the earth has been fresh turned. Your shovel bites and the soil gives like bread. You listen for sounds, boots, a voice, the sniff of a hound, because the wrong noise ends the night and begins a public shame. The ground tastes of iron when you press it to your tongue metaphorically. You never literally taste it. Some things you do not want to know from the inside. When you reach the coffin, you don't grunt like a butcher or crow like a victor. There's a quiet, thin and brittle, like the moment before a storm breaks a window. You lift the lid and are struck every time by the everyday ordinary of what's inside. Linen tucked like someone still hoping for dignity. A neck still carrying the twist of a collar. A face that, in moonlight, looks more like someone asleep than someone gone. You get used to the shock but never immune. Bodies are not trophies. They are heavy and honest, failing to obey the categories men try to put around them. They smell sometimes sweetly of soap or herbs, recent, sometimes of sour rot. The skin can be cool as milk or sticky as cloth left in a rain barrel. Eyes, fixed in a kindness they never earned, stare at a ceiling they no longer share. You feel ridiculous putting labels on things. Still, you name the conditions in your head because names make you useful to the surgeon who waits with coin clenched in the dark. You have rules, born of superstition and experience. Don't wake the watchers. Village watches can be bloody-minded, and watchmen love their torches. Don't touch the shrouds more than needed. Families might notice. Don't linger to insult the dead. Time is everything. And when you're done, replace the sod neat as a seam. The longer you can make the ground look like sleep, the longer the town will let its grief remain private. Risk is part of the job. If you are caught, if the parish sees the missing shroud or the coffin jostled, you do not suffer only disguising and scorn. The law swings its arms heavy, pillory, public lashings hanging. Once a friend was dragged onto the scaffold and made to hang until his screams turned into something like prayer. The coin you pocketed tastes of that memory every time you close your fist. There are mayoral edicts that call you a profaner. There are midnight mobs with burning brands who will find you if rumor tastes your breath. And yet surgeons need what you take. Their hands have to learn the machine of the body before they can fix it. The leaden grey of a lung, the kink of a bowel, the way a ligament snaps. These are lessons that save future lives. You tell yourself, between bites of stale bread and the lather of your conscience, I steal to heal. It is an ugly math, and sometimes the sums don't add up. You hand off your cargo in a back room to a man with green fingers and a smell of bone. He is not soft. He counts the cloth and the coins with a gaze that measures guilt in seconds. You pocket the money, cold coin that clinks like mistake. And the exchange is quick, no thanks given. On a shelf, the surgeon lays out his instruments. Hooks with the gleam of promise. Knives honed like questions. He pays for cadavers by the night and swears under his breath about anatomy and progress. You walk away lighter and heavier all at once. At home you sleep fitfully. Dreams of hands, your own among them, digging into the earth. Hands that used to clap for you now pointing. You wake with the taste of soil at the back of your throat, and you wash until the skin is raw. The coins warm your palms, but cannot warm the hollow where shame lives. Still, the next week there will be a hunger again. The street will call. You will be useful and despised in turns. Quick poll. Be honest. No moral dressing. If food and a roof were at stake, would you trade a night like this for 3 coins? Comment coins. If yes, no way if not. I want to know who among you is willing to cross the line when survival is the judge. You pass the surgeon's door and feel a different call. Not theft now, but service. The man who counts cadavers also shuns contagion with a zeal that humbles him into masks and herbs. He hires hands to help when the air itself feels poisonous. The same alley where the dead were handed over is the alley where, when plague hits, a figure in a strange beaked mask walks by lamplight, collecting the sick. The trade you made in the moonlight has tied you to a world that needs hands for more than theft. From bargaining with corpses for coin, you step into a role that pays in dread and bruised pride. A helper to the doctor who stands in fouling masks and waxed cloaks to stare down disease. Wipe the earth from your boots, put out your lantern. The next shift awaits where the living cough and the air tastes of sulfur and rosemary. Doctor assistant. A low, hollow bell tolling. Distant coughing like a wind through reeds. The soft scrape of a cane on cobbles. You follow the doctor down a lane so quiet it feels stolen. Doors are shut like lids. Curtains are pinned. Someone breathes a prayer into a sleeve, and the whole street holds it there, as if it might float like smoke to heaven. The sign nailed over the house is simple. A chalked cross. It means money, fear, and a job that smells like vinegar and burning. Your uniform is practical, not noble. A waxed coat that repels the filth, at least in theory. Thick gloves that keep the worst of it off your palms. Boots that sink in muck and never dry properly. The doctor himself looks like a walking bird. A long-beaked mask stuffed full of herbs, glass visors for eyes, a wide-brimmed hat that proclaims, "I mean business," to everyone who still believes in titles. He carries a cane to probe, to point, to keep people at arm's length. You carry the things he needs. Poultice pots, a basin, clean linen, clean only by a medieval definition, and a heavy jar of vinegar warmed over a brazier. You step over the threshold, and the room's air hits you like a hand. It's thick with fever, and something sweeter and fouler. Rotting fruit and boiled herbs, and the metallic tang that means blood nearby. Someone's face peeks from a blanket, eyelids red-rimmed, hand curled like a small, helpless crab. A bubo bursts, an angry black blossom the size of a plum, and the sound of the family choking on grief becomes part of the room's breath. Your job is both mundane and terrible. You set the basin, you warm the vinegar and toss in rosemary or rue to make the smell bearable, if bearable is stretching it. You fetch poultices from the master's satchel, lint soaked in wine and herbal mash, oat and mustard sometimes nothing sensible at all. You hold the light. You steady the person's wrist while the doctor examines the swollen knot beneath skin. His cane taps, he leans, he smells. He may lance the bubo, slice it with a blade to let the infection run, thinking release is mercy. You feel the rush of panic like a wind in your shoulders, and you keep your hands in what must be steadiness. You clean. You carry soiled rags to the brazier, where they will be burned. You boil water and pour it over linen. You stir jars of foul-smelling medicine that will be painted on skin or swallowed by a woman who believes in anything that promises life. You fetch more wine when the cough goes hard. You hold a bowl under a fevered mouth and watch sputum swell like overfilled sacks. You do the grunt work that no one else wants, the hands-on parts of healing and the final merciless tasks when healing is done. The herbs in the beak, juniper, myrrh, rosemary, perhaps laurel, aren't magic. They're a ritual, a little armor, and a smell that covers rot. The mask offers psychological protection as much as physical. People who see the bird think the doctor is a keeper of knowledge, not a spewer of panic. You don't always get a beak. Sometimes you get a scrap of cloth and the knowledge that your lungs are on the clock. There's theatre to the work. The doctor rattles a list of humours and miasmas. He offers bloodletting, cupping, poultices that smell like earth, and potions that fizz with hope. Families clutch at any promise. You hand things over with reverence and watch coins slip from trembling fingers, coins that pay for the risk you take. If he's a good showman, he will look grave, pronounce judgment, and leave a small miracle like a cooled fever or a patient who dreams easier. If he's a charlatan, he'll take the money and leave the house smelling of herbs and disappointment. Danger is never theoretical. You breathe the same air as fevered lungs. You wipe suppurating wounds. You carry bedding out for burial or burning. Flies trace a map across the floor like relentless cartographers. You learn quick tricks. How to tie a knot so the shroud won't come loose. How to pack a bed so the family won't see the worst. How to step where shaking hands won't find you. You sleep with your clothes still half on, because removing them feels like inviting the sickness to move with you when you wake. You wake with dreams full of coughing rooms and the taste of vinegar in your mouth. People treat you oddly. Some spill gratitude sharp as a knife and offer you ale. Others cross the street when they see you. Children are taught to clutch their mother's skirts and whisper about the beaked man like a bogey. You become a symbol, necessary and feared. There's shame that rubs at your ankles like dirt. There's a strange pride that warms your chest when you've soothed a fevered hand, or when, by some miracle, someone opens their eyes and smiles at you for the first time in weeks. There are tasks you do that history rarely glamorizes. You help cart bodies to the pyre or the pit. You lift and bundle with grim efficiency, because if you do not do it, disease spreads faster and the town collapses into a bleak, hungry grief. You mark houses with chalk. You help the authorities carry out isolation measures that feel cruel and necessary. Once, in the height of an outbreak, you helped fumigate a house, burning reeds and throwing vinegar stones into embers until the smoke drove the flies out and the air felt less like a hand around the throat. You thought you saved the house. The next day, another neighbor knocked and the circle began again. Quick check for the brave. You've handled guts, carried the dead, and managed people's worst days. Would you sign up for a week in the plague ward for the pay? Comment wards if yes, street sweep. If you'd rather collect rents than cough into a poultice bowl. I'm keeping score of the brave versus the delicately employed. When the doctor finally moves on, his shadow slipping past the doorway, the house exhales. You stay and burn the rags, boil the dishes, and sweep. The family might leave a crust of bread. You fold the emptied bed back into the wood frame and close the shutter. You rub your face with vinegar because that's what you've learned to do. It helps a little and fools you into feeling safe. You lace up your boots and walk back into a street that seems both emptier and louder after a death. The work today bought you coins for bread and a weight that sits in your ribs like a second heart. You step off the plague house threshold and the town seems smaller and stern. But the day's not done. Not all humiliation and danger comes with fever and herbs. Some of it comes with crowns and privilege. Wipe your hands, dry the vinegar from your face, and steel yourself. The next job trades sickness for stature, and a kind of injustice wrapped in silk. The whipping boy. A drum roll faintly in the distance. Murmured footsteps on polished stone. The soft rustle of silk and the sharp snap of leather. You wake before dawn, in a room that smells like oak polish and candle wax. The palace is already a living thing. Doors opening, bowls clinking, a hearth that never quite goes cold. You put on a simple jerkin, cleaner than a peasant's shirt but built to be inconspicuous. And you walk corridors lined with portraits of men who never had to taste a lash. Your escort is a groom who smiles the smile of someone used to silence. This is your life now, close enough to power to see its teeth, far enough from it to get the bruises. They call you a companion, a playmate, a schoolmate. The title the books use is kinder than the work, whipping boy. The idea is ugly in its brilliance. Young princes are royal and therefore sacrosanct. The law and custom protect their skin. So when the heir misbehaves, it's not his flesh that must be marked, but yours. You are chosen because you spend your days at his elbow, learning manners, sharing games, carrying secrets. Because for the crown, deterrence works better when the cost hits someone who matters to the prince. When your friend screams, the prince may blink and learn not to steal apples. When you scream, he learns to fear consequence. Historical note: whipping boys were used in elite households to discipline heirs, more common in early modern courts. Imagine the ritual. You stand in a sunlit hall while tutors recite Latin, and men in ruffs lean like judges. The prince is nearby, perfumed and petulant, maybe reading a book he doesn't need to understand. A tutor drops his inked quill and demands respect. A mistake, an answer too slow, a joke mistimed. And the tutor turns to you because the prince's skin is off limits. The cane snaps the air. The sound is sharp, like thunder in a small room. It lands across your back with a white-hot shock that maps itself onto memory. Pain blossoms, immediate and clean. You breathe, you swallow, and everyone watches. The prince learning, the court studying effect. The humiliation is folded into the work. After the lash, you help the prince up. You comfort him, if he's the fragile sort. You hand him his folio, as if nothing happened. You are corporal proof that privilege has consequences, except those consequences are kept from the privileged. The paradox makes you a walking lesson in obedience and resentment. People will praise your courage quietly and refuse to take your hand in public. You get coins and a modicum of schooling. You get access to the palace kitchens and to scraps of privilege reserved for those who serve as instruments of power. You also get a permanent bruise under your dignity. Sensory detail. The cane smells faintly of horsehair and oil. The floor is cold even in summer. Candle smoke hangs in the corners. Your back stings where the leather met skin. Salt in your sweat, making the brand of humiliation glitter. The prince's perfume follows him like a small weather front. It makes your stomach twist. Courtiers cough politely. Children stare because they don't know better, and because they know which body pays the price for another's tantrums. There are practical rewards. If your prince grows to be a ruler who remembers you kindly, you may be granted lands, a cushioned post, a pension. History occasionally rewards those who shared a childhood with kings. But the risk is real. You could become a target of the court gossip, brittle from constant shame, or simply disappear into a role that teaches submission as virtue. Your relationships are complicated. You are loved and loved from afar by the same boy who incites your pain. You learn how to laugh at terrible jokes and how to swallow when humor would be a lie. Now let's be blunt. Would you trade a few lashes a year for the chance to sit at a future monarch's knee? Drop a comment. Bruise for better, if yes. No TX if not. I want to know who among you would wear someone else's punishment for a shot at proximity. A soft sigh of velvet. A footfall that carries authority. Here's where things twist. Proximity breeds possibilities. The child you punish can grow into a sovereign who trusts you, confides in you, and, if you're clever, rewards loyalty. But the palace runs on far stranger intimacies than shared scars. Power wants servants who are both invisible and essential. If the whip taught you to take pain for another, the next role teaches you to clean for another, up to and including the most private acts of a ruler. From lashes to lavatories, you leave the hall with your back warm from punishment and find that some positions press you even closer to royal flesh. Trade your injected dignity for a velvet apron and a key to the monarch's private rooms. If you thought being punished for the prince's sins was awkward, wait until you're trusted to handle the king's most intimate needs. The groom of the stool. Deep dive. Quiet footfalls on polished oak. The soft clink of a metal ring. A candle's wick hissing. A muted rustle of silk. You are summoned, not with trumpets but with a hush and a key slid under a painted door. The private closet waits. A small room off the bedchamber, warm from recent use, lined with cushions and a low wooden chair that hides a chamber pot. The air is an odd mix, faint lavender from the scented gloves of courtiers, lemon oil from polished wood, and an honest human tang that tells you this is work no one wants to name aloud. Your title is ridiculous and precise. Groom of the stool. The job is intimate in the way a confession is intimate. Private, essential, and impossible to describe without blushing. You help the sovereign relieve himself. You hand the king his cloth. You clean him. You empty the pot. You wash his hands. You smooth his sleeve. And with every motion you knead into the very thing rulers hide. You learn to be quiet with bodies and quick with cloth. You learn how to slide a chamber pot away so a visiting noble never sees the edge of mortal need. Groom of the stool, trusted, intimate role in royal households, sometimes politically powerful. This isn't just hygiene, it's counsel disguised as servitude. While you tidy, kings unbolt, emotionally and literally. They confess grievances, voice personal fears, test ideas for a laugh. The proximity is power. A groom who listens well can learn how to nudge a favor, pass a whisper, time a request. You are the keeper of secrets that never see a parchment. You know which table a monarch prefers, which night they walk the ramparts restless, which advisor caused a private laugh. Your hands wipe more than flesh. They swipe crumbs from policy. Sensory detail is brutal and banal. The chair's wood is smooth with use. The pot's rim is rimed with mineral stains that catch candlelight. Linen flaps damp and heavy when you take it to the basin. The king's skin can be cool and papery from a long night's fever, or hot and fragrant with perfume. The chamber smells change with seasons. Autumn brings smoke and spiced wine. Spring brings sweat and hay. You become a connoisseur of small scents, vinegar, oak, soap, the metallic tang that sometimes tells you the stomach is off. Yes, they even took what the sovereign excreted as a kind of health report. You count color and texture the way a clerk counts silk. It's awkward, humiliating, if you like glamour, but it comes with odd privileges. You hold keys to doors others do not. You can summon access to rooms and to audiences. The steward may seek your favor for a petty grant. The ambitious courtier slips you a coin with the sort of furtive politeness a thief reserves for priests. In some courts, the groom became a power broker. Quiet influence with no title, but with the ear of the man who carried a kingdom on his stool. That's the upside. The downside is, you are never quite the person you were before, both indispensable and socially exiled. People need you's work, then refuse to treat you as a man. There are rules. Discretion above all. What happens in the closet, stays in the closet. Cleanliness. Next, the sovereign's linens cannot smell of scandal. Speed, the room cannot be a place where gossip gathers. Tact, do not react if an ugly confession is offered like a dish. And always, always a steady hand. One slip and the cloth is stained, and papier, gossip, and court rumors swell, until even your pocket money can't buy silence. The risks are political as much as physical. If you offend the wrong favorite, your tenure ends. Fall from favor, and you may find old friends shun you. Your pension dries up faster than the king's patience. But hold favor, and you can move from sweeping chamber pots to managing small household accounts, securing an annuity, or buying a cottage. Infamy and fortune ride the same horse. Proximity. Quick on-screen engagement. Would you trade dignity for influence? Comment. Keys. If you'd accept the job for power and pension, nope. If a private life beats a private throne, I'm curious which of you would literally hold history in the crook of your arm. A basin pours. Water slaps linen. A soft chair scrape as someone adjusts their weight. When your shift ends, you are both cleaner and fouler. Washed, yes, but wearing knowledge that stains. You carry coins and confidences back into daylight, and your shadow is longer for the secrets you carry. People bow to you because it's proper. Some look away because intimacy breeds superstition. You learn to step lightly through both. From the hush of royal closets to the open public stage of justice, trade your key for an apron that smells of iron and sweat. The court's private secrets taught you the weight of closeness. The next job teaches the weight of finality. Step out into the square where crowds gather, ropes creak, and the city keeps its own terrible order, the executioner's assistant. You arrive at the scaffold like someone going to a very public, very final meeting. The square smells of tar, sweat, wet wool, burnt meat from the stall, and something iron underneath it all. Sunlight makes the gallows wood gleam like a stage prop. Only the stakes are real. People cluster in rings, voices rising and falling like weather. Children are lifted on shoulders, old women clutch rosaries. Someone laughs too high, someone sobs too low. Your uniform is plain but practical. A wool doublet that hides scars and a leather apron that will see things no one wants it to see. You carry tools, a coarsely oiled rope, a heavy block of timber, the chopping block or the stool depending on the sentence, a bucket for water, a rough towel, and sometimes a basket with a hood or a last loaf. The executioner, broad, efficient, with a face like a closed book, does the blow. You do the preparation, the grunt work, the quiet logistics that turn spectacle into ritual. You set the block smooth, lay the linen where flesh will briefly meet wood. You check the rope's knot. A bad knot is cruelty, not justice. You steady the condemned as the crowd roars or prays. Sometimes you hold a hand that trembles. Sometimes you push a stubborn chin down. Sometimes you receive a curse that could peel paint. Your task is either to make the end swift or to ensure the sentence happens at all. You learn to work with a single, grim metric: efficiency. It's not all brutality. There is a ritual tenderness to doing your task well. A clean block, a steady knot, a careful hood. These can spare a person an extra measure of terror. You listen to the condemned's last words and learn that people's final speeches are small, surprising, human things: apologies, complaints, a joke tossed to thin the fear. You carry those words home like contraband. Sometimes a last petition: "Tell my sister I kiss no one else," sticks to your ribs for nights. Practical hazards are immediate. A rope that's been used too long can fray. A block that's too small can mean a slow, wrenching end. If the crowd surges, you step into danger. The mob is mercurial and fast. There are nights when a condemned friend is given clemency at the last moment, and the square explodes in relief. And nights when the sentence is enforced, and the applause is cruel and loud. The job requires steadiness, hands that do what they must, while 1,000 eyes watch. There's social consequence too. You are necessary and feared. People will give you coin for the speed of your work and hiss that your children don't play with theirs. You will be whispered about in taverns. Lovers will pull their partners in their arms a little tighter when your boots pass. Mercy and ostracism walk together in this life. You might be called upon to carry out sentences against people you once knew in a different light. A drunk who mended your fence, a neighbor who cheated at dice. You can be the instrument of justice, or the instrument of the state's darker moods. Sometimes it's impossible to tell which. There's also the cleanup, the part that history often mentions without tenderness. You take the body down, wrap it, and move it to where the law or custom says it should go. Sometimes you're given a token of thanks by the family, coins or a crust. Sometimes the family won't look you in the eye. You tend to the block, scrub the stains, lift the bucket, and sweep the sawdust. The smell lingers in the weave of your clothes like a stubborn rumor. You sleep with the drumbeat in your head. Quick poll for you. Could you do a job where your hands make final decisions for a living? Comment scaffold. If you think you could hold steady, no way. If you'd walk away and let the law be strangest problem. I'm keeping a list. Morality versus paycheck. One comment at a time. When the last person leaves the square, you don't swagger home. You walk the back alleys where the hawkers don't shout and the dogs ignore you. The coins in your purse pay for bread, but they don't buy you neighbors' trust. That's the cost. You are part protector of order, part deliverer of the state's final message. You stand at the edge of things and watch life continue. A baker kneading dough, a child skipping rope, a pair of lovers stealing a kiss in a shadowed doorway. The world is brutally normal right after extraordinary violence. That is its cruelty. You've held ropes, wiped blocks, and swept sawdust where the city met its laws. Now step away from finality into the quieter, humiliating grind of daily survival. Where you once cleared up after death, you'll now walk the lanes asking for alms on behalf of the holy, not to punish anyone, but to feed the hungry and keep monasteries running. Trade the gallows drum for a begging bowl, and the scaffold's public shame for the soft shame of pleading at doors. You step into the morning with a bowl in your hands and a list of names in your head. The abbey sent you out, thin rope tied at your waist, a patched cloak that smells of lavender and old bread, and the duty to ask for what the monks can't provide themselves. You are the church's small, mobile goodwill, the alms gatherer, the link between altar and ashbin, between cloistered charity and hungry mouths on the street. There's a technique to it. You're not just pleading, you're working a ritual. You rattle the little bell as you walk. Ting ting, it announces you are legitimate and not a thief in disguise.
A white badge sewn into your sleeve tells people you were blessed to beg on sacred business. You bow at thresholds, palms open to show you carry nothing but need. You say the right words, for the poor, brother, with a voice that mixes humility and inevitability. The householders decide in seconds. Some slip a coin, some shove you away, some slam the door as if poverty is contagious. The sensory vocabulary is intimate. Doors have smells. The baker's is a warm, yeasty hug. The tailor's is a tangle of lint and oil. The wealthy merchants greet you with pungent spices and wine-soaked stories. Your palms feel every texture as you pass your bowl. Threadbare sleeves, gilt buttons, the smooth coin that slips like a small sun. Rain beads on your hood. Your fingers go numb. Breath mists in the air. The bowl gets heavier with silver and lighter with rejection. You learn to measure a day by the clink. There's choreography to the shame. A woman with an infant will take your bowl with a look that reads, "Please." A stooped laborer will push you toward the next house after he has nothing to give. Children will throw pebbles at your heels to see if you flinch. A fat lord might drop a coin and watch your face for gratitude, like he's testing the weather. Sometimes bread is offered instead of coin. Sometimes a scrap of meat. Sometimes nothing but a muttered prayer. Each offering feeds someone tonight, or fuels a rumor about your morals tomorrow. You build relationships that are part commerce, part confession. The same family that refuses to meet your eyes when you come to ask for alms will wink later as you pass with a loaf tucked under your arm. The widow with the second-floor window always presses her curtain aside to whisper where a secret crust is hidden. You learn micro-routes, back lanes where generous souls keep a pot simmering, windowsills that hide coins under tiles, the grocer who counts you as part of the parish ledger. Your knowledge is barterable. A good word at the refectory might earn a place in the queue for bread. There's labour, no pamphlet notes. You stand in the rain and sing for pity at a market cross. You dodge carts and scold stray pigs away from your basket. You barter small favours, fetch a neighbour's coal, mend a shutter in exchange for coin. Many a day ends with you trading an errand for half a loaf. Your hands are raw from opening chipped bowls and prying coins from frozen hands in winter. Salt collects in the creases of your palms like small, secret maps. Danger is real. People in a village can be kind one morning and cruel the next if their pantry runs low. Drunkenness amplifies cruelty. Uneven faces leaning from tavern doors. A stone thrown with experimental malice. Sometimes the poor you represent resent you because they see your bowl as proof they weren't first. You learn to negotiate fragile egos and brittle hope with the same care you use in passing a hot pan. But this work also gives you stories. The small, human reveals that historians ignore. A child saved from hunger by a single coin will knot their fingers into yours for a minute that lasts a lifetime. A widow will press a rosary into your palm, whisper a blessing, then duck back into the dim warmth of her kitchen. You collect names and debts and blessings the way a merchant keeps ledgers. Many nights you sleep with those notes in your hat. Mrs. Alder on the corner owes us soup. Old Tom near the mill will pay for 1 week. The shoemaker's boy has a cough and needs more than bread. In a way, you are a social worker. worker, an archivist of small mercies stitched into a town's fabric. Why alms mattered. Monasteries provided food, shelter, and medicine, but only if the community paid. There's a curious dignity in the ritual that hardship breeds. When the bell tinkles and a coin drops, you bow and say a prayer out of habit, not morality, more like an incantation that keeps the world from tipping. Sometimes someone sees you as a saint. He does God's work, they'll say, and mean it. Other times they see you as a nuisance. You learn to love the moments between those extremes. The quiet exchange, hand to hand, where no one else is watching. Quick engagement check. Would you spend your days asking for bread to give it to others? Comment bell. If you'd ring and beg for good cause, stay home if you'd rather earn coin by other means. I'm honestly curious which of you would choose humble work for communal payoff. As dusk tightens, your bowl lighter than at midday, you make the rounds to institutions, the almshouse, the infirmary, and the old woman who keeps a ledger in pencil she made from stolen faith. You hand over sacks, tabulate names, and watch the monks sort the spoils with ceremony. Bread first, ale second, spare cloaks last. The abbey doors close with a soft, decisive thunk that sounds to you like a safe falling over treasure. You have done your day's duty. The coins will feed bellies tonight. You shoulder your emptiness and think of bowls and ovens. The next morning the mill wheel will turn again. Grain will arrive in sacks, carted through mud, measured, and turned to flour. And the very bread you begged for, it will have started as a heavy sack of grain dumped at a miller's door. You follow the sound because sometimes the work of the poor leads you to other work. The streets that hand you coins for soup also hand out opportunities for labor, temporary picks, a lifting job, a child's errand. A miller one afternoon takes pity and says, "If you can haul, bring your back tomorrow at dawn." The words are both mercy and sentence. From the bowl to the sack, you've begged for bread. Now prepare to haul grain. Dust will replace the smell of stew. Heavy muscles will replace polite bows. Take off the bell, tighten your laces, and brace your shoulders for a day where flour becomes a storm in a closed room. The miller's boy. Water wheel. Thump, 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 or creak of a windmill's sails. The grinding rumble of stone on stone. Sacks thudding. Birds complaining outside. You wake before the sun, when the town is still a promise, and the sky is the color of unbaked dough. Your breath fogs the doorway as you shoulder a sack and step into the yard. The mill smells like the world's mother. Warm grain, a sharp tang of bran, and the faint sour note of yeast promising bread tomorrow. It's sweet, and it will get in your hair. The mill is a living, hungry thing. From the outside, the water wheel pulses like a heart. Inside the floor is a forest of rungs, pulleys, chutes, and gears that talk to you in low, mechanical voices. A heavy oak hopper hangs above the millstones. One stone sits still like an old god, the other spins, and between them your job happens. Grain becomes flour, coarse becomes fine, hunger becomes loaves. You're the miller's muscle. Your thumbs are thick from tying sacks, your forearms from hoisting, and your lungs from inhaling dust so fine it feels like powdered cloud in your throat. Grain arrives by cart, farmers' shoulders stooped, children clinging to reins, each sack a small negotiation. The miller counts, the farmer curses the weight, and you lift the burden onto a shoulder and carry it to the hopper. Sacks are heavy as small animals, their twine bites. Your back learns the geometry of each lift. Bend at the knees, tuck it close, pivot, place. Get sloppy and you'll feel the cost in a snapped tendon or a prize bruise. Fact: millers often took a multure, a portion of the grain, as payment for grinding. You pour grain into the hopper and the world gulps. The funnel screeches as kernels fall, a tiny avalanche. The millstones wake with a sound like distant thunder. You learn to judge stone by ear. A soft, even rumble means good grind. A jagged clack means a pebble or a bad seam. Stop everything, clear it, or risk a ruined batch. If a stone bites a pebble, the kitchen bread will taste like grit, and your whole day falls into the miller's bad temper. Dust is everywhere. It floats in the shafts of light like spirits, coats your lashes, and settles on the inside of your lips. After a few weeks, you cough flour instead of breath. Your hair loses its color under the fine white. Miller's cough is a phrase people whisper. You don't notice at first. You're too busy keeping the stone gap right, the dress of the furrows correct, the feed even. The secret skill is in dressing the stones, cutting the furrows so they shear grain rather than crush it. It's an art. Bad dressing means flat bread, angry villagers, and less coin. There's muscle work and there's cunning. When the water runs slow, you wedge a board, nudge the sluice, coax the wheel to keep pace. When the farmer tries to cheat with damp grain, you argue like a trader at market. Numbers, weight, the miller's toll. Everyone knows the miller takes a cut, but the cut is negotiable and often determined by who has the better temper that morning. You are a negotiator and a porter, and sometimes a referee when neighbors argue about his scales. Hazards are literal and immediate. The hopper throat is a trap. Loose clothing, a dropped foot. A curious hand can be pulled toward the stones in a heartbeat. Sacks slip. Someone's fingers can be dragged into a chute. A lad who plays around the pit can vanish in a muffled scream. The mill keeps its secrets and sometimes keeps bodies. You learn to watch the moving parts the way sailors watch waves. Don't reach for something once the stones are hungry. Don't let your scarf dangle. Keep your weight centered on the mill's wobble. A sharp shout, then quick footsteps. Sand scraped from stone into a sack. Payment is thin. The miller may give you a handful of grain, a crust at dusk, a coin when he's in a generous mood. Sometimes you live in the lean pantry attic for room and board, snatching sleep between shifts. Apprenticeship is your path. Learn the stones, learn the books, and maybe one day the mill is yours, or at least a share of it. Many millers rise to be surly little lords of their trade, collecting multure and grudging respect. Others stay millers' boys forever, their hands white with dust until the dust becomes the color they understand. You also witness the social heartbeat. The mill is where villagers talk, news traded with grain, births announced between sacks, gossip puffing up in flower clouds. A rumor seeds quicker than rye. You hear of weddings, court summons, and who cheated who at cards. You're small in the trade, but large in the rumor mill. There's a secret nobility in the work, too. You touch the substance that keeps people alive. Your toil turns fields into loaves. A mother takes her sack to you and leaves with flour for her children. A baker pounds dough at midnight, and the town wakes to fresh bread. You walk home smelling faintly of yeast, proud and tired in the particular way of those who make life possible. Quick poll. Would you swap your desk for a day as the miller's boy, sack on shoulder, dust in hair, if it meant feeding a family? Comment grist. If yes, stay on laptop. If no, I want to know who among you is ready to lift literal weight for literal bread. Evening bell. The wheel slows. A last bag thuds into place. By sunset, you wipe your hands on your jerkin, tally coins, and squeeze the last flour from the millstone's teeth. You stash any leftover grain under tight cloth, lock the hopper, and watch the sun paint the sail or water in gold. You've moved mountains, small hills really, today. Your back aches in a way that feels honest. Head out from the mill yard where flour settled like a pale fog on your skin, and follow the road where horses stamp their impatience. Trade sacks for saddles. Leave the smell of yeast and bran for the iron of tack and the sweat of hooves. The next shift will demand speed, polish, and the courage to stand beside a man who charges into danger and expects you to keep him ready. A man becomes a silhouette of power, and you, small, calloused, are the hinge. Practice is brutal. You run drills at the yard, footwork, lance balance, running with a shield until your shoulder screams. You learn to fall and get up without flinching. Your body remembers the right angle to take an impact, so the armor takes it, not you. You spar with other squires until the sun is a coin dropped low in the sky, and your breath comes in sharp, bright bursts. There's laughter, too. Jokes about a night's boring sermon, or the time a horse ate the Lord's new codpiece. But the laughter is stitched into a fabric of discipline. No one will rescue you in a skirmish except the man who's trained like you have. Your knight, your comrades, your fellow squire.
Then there are the errands. You deliver messages along muddy lanes, carry sealed orders across fields, and stand by at tournaments bearing a crest and a standard. At a tourney, your hands ache with the weight of expectation. The crowd screams like a living wind. You hold the lance while your knight charges, an arrow of noise and color. And when the rider falls, you run into the chaos, water the horse, lift a visor, fetch a healer, wrap a wound. You learn the swift kindness of people who live by steel. On campaign, the small cruelties of life get larger. You dig latrines and smell them forever after. Fetch water from streams that taste of iron and mud, and heat rations over a spit that never seems to stop smoking. You clean the blood from cuirasses and mend torn padding. You're up before dawn and tending armor after dusk. Your hands smell of lanolin, salt, and gunmetal. Sometimes you help stitch a wound closed with a trembling needle, your fingers steady because you've learned. Steady hands are worth more than a coin. Emotion is a raw muscle in this job. You admire the knight. He is a model, a teacher, a storm of contradictions, but you also resent his ease. He sleeps on a feather bed and demands your back take a blow meant for him. You learn complex loyalties. You teach yourself to be proud of what you do. You keep the man who holds a banner alive, and by doing so, you protect a village, a family, a harvest. In quieter moments, you find small rewards, a coin slipped into your palm, a wink from a lady at a window, the honest, filthy laughter shared by men who have seen each other alive and dead. There's risk. On the battlefield, you are always 3 heartbeats from catastrophe. Armor fails, horses spook, a struck banner means a rout. You might be the one sent to find a missing rider, or the one left holding a horse while your lord rides into danger. People romanticize knighthood, but the squire's reality is often drudgery with a sword. Long hours of work, little pay, and the potential for sudden awful endings. But there's also a path upward. A squire who masters arms, temper, and etiquette might win favor and be dubbed a knight himself. That possibility, however slim, keeps you moving. You count each small success, a screw tightened without complaint, a horse placated, a wound stitched. Each one is a rung on a ladder that might someday be a suit of your own. Quick check. Which part would you hate? The muck of latrines, the weight of the armor, or the sight of a knight riding into rubble? Tell me which in the comments, latrine, armor, or battle, and be honest, I'll read them. When dusk falls, you return to the stable. You rub down a horse until its skin shines, rehitch the bridle, and take a moment to look up at the sky. Stars spill like dropped coins across velvet. You lay out the kit for the next day, and sit for a breath so quiet you can hear the instruments in the Lord's Hall. Flute, laugh, a goblet tapped in toast. You take a hunk of bread and cheese and eat slowly because you earned it with hands that hurt. Pride is a hot ember in your chest. You have kept men alive today. You have earned the right to sleep. Now that you've borne banners, brushed mail, and felt the weight of a world built on muscle and grit, step back with me for a second. We've walked sewage pits, tread wheels, cradled leech jars, and carried last bread for the dead. We've been hands and feet of a society that needed every odd job to keep breathing. Before we tie the bow on this medieval tour, let's take a breath. One that crosses centuries. So, what did we just do? For the last half hour, you've been a Gong Farmer. You've felt leeches suck your calves. You've stomped cloth in vats of urine. You've chased rats under moonlight. And you've stood inside a wooden wheel to lift stone to heaven. You smelled. You bled a little in imagination. You laughed and gawked. And if you're anything like me, you came away with 2 stubborn feelings. Gratitude for modern creature comforts, and respect for the people whose strange, dangerous work kept whole communities alive. Here's the human truth threaded through all of it. Whether it's the squire cleaning armor, or the Gong Farmer emptying the pit, every job met a need. Some were gruesome, some were absurd. All required courage, skill, and a certain kind of endurance. Those jobs shaped towns, cathedrals, and the very idea of community, because someone, often the least visible someone, showed up every day. So, before you click away to doomscroll, think for a beat. What do you do that helps someone else survive? What modern job would a medieval person look at and say, "Thank God for that"? Drop it in the comments. Let's build a chain of gratitude across time. I'll pin the best replies. If one of these medieval roles made you gag, laugh, or secretly admire the resolve required, tell me which job you'd never try. Be dramatic, be honest. I read every comment. And hey, if you like this deep, dirty dive into the past, hit that like button, subscribe for more weird history that feels like a midnight story, and ring the bell so you don't miss part 2, when we dig even deeper into medieval miseries and marvels. Share it with a friend who thinks their job is rough. Let's see if they can last a day. Thanks for walking through the muck with me. Stay curious, stay slightly horrified, and I'll see you in the next one.